Boys, we are back. New build guide video. If you haven't been in the streams lately, we got the twister back going. It's faster than ever. It does more damage than ever. If you haven't seen this build before, it's pretty difficult to wrap your head around initially, but once you get the combo down, it's a handful of buttons. It's really not that difficult. It's probably the most fun build we made ever. It was the most fun build I played last league as well. While I'm yapping, I'll just get a little showcase in. A lot of things have changed in the build. First of all, you don't need as much spirit, which is good. You don't even necessarily need the companion anymore. Yeah, a lot is different about the character. The clear is like S tier. At level 80, we were doing T4 Simulacrum. We'll talk about budget and options like that later. Defensive scalers, whatnot. There's definitely a different defensive approach you can take. I kind of just ported over the gear from my last build into this one because I didn't want to go shop for a bunch of armor sets. We have a new way to generate frenzy charges, which is really nice. The single target is like really good, but it's like conditional, and we're still trying to problem solve exactly how to make it like as good as I'd like it to be. So this is going to be the first guide of many. But yeah, it's obviously one of the fastest builds in the game, if you haven't picked up on that yet. And yeah, it was good last league on a budget. I can't attest to it this league and whatnot because I haven't league started with it, so I can't say, oh, insane budget build. Obviously that term means something different to everybody, but yeah, the character is broken. We're on Ritualist. It's also really good on Deadeye. It's playable on Amazon. We chose a Ritualist just because we want the extra rarity. The extra ring is really nice. The infinite charms are really nice once you've got the currency to sustain the rite of passage charm, things of that nature. But yeah, I guess this is just our little map display. The easiest content on the build is definitely Simulacrum. You can kind of just AFK it. The walk up to the Zesh fight is pretty brain dead. You one-shot King of the Mists. Arbiter is the worst boss fight in the game just by virtue of the arena size. The twisters just aren't very likely to make their way to him. So keep that in mind if you're trying to make like a boss killer type build. There are definitely better options than this, but I think all around this build is it's pretty solid. Obviously, it's like a good idea for me to say that because I'm trying to get you to play the character, but I'm not trying to get you to play it because I think it's good. I'm trying to get you to play it because I think it's fun, and it's a little off meta. But yeah, this is what we league started with last league, so we're very familiar with the archetype. Kind of overkilled that map, but yeah, we're just gonna go straight into breaking down how the interaction works. Take you over here. So pretty much we're using attack speed to scale movement. We're using Whirling Slash at the lowest level we can have it. It says 1 here, but when you weapon swap, it's going to say 5 because you're using 2 weapons. So this is the weapon that you're dealing your damage with. Fizz, Lightning. This could also be Fizz, Hybrid Fizz. This could be Increase Fizz, Flat Fizz, Cold damage. But the suffixes are what really matter. You want Fractured Crit specifically so that you can guarantee your suffixes. I haven't personally checked it out, but apparently SNOOBAE has a crafting tutorial on how to make these spears. You specifically want the Flying Spear because it has increased projectile speed, and we're using a support that's going to scale with in our Twister. But yeah, I'll also get into why we're using Cold in a little bit, but that craft, from what I heard from people in my chat that were messing around with it, he starts with a recom, so there's like a little bit of a gamble at the beginning. And yeah, you want to start with the fractured crit chance because once your prefixes get filled, you can guarantee these 2 mods because they come from perfect essences. So if you can get these prefixes with this suffix of fractured crit chance, the item is guaranteed. And yeah, so this is the weapon that you're going to be dealing damage with. If you're not familiar with weapon swaps, this is the greatest build to teach you the importance of them. And then when we're using our Whirling Slash, it's using this spear, which is just attack speed with 3 sockets for additional attack speed. A lot of people ask why don't we use skill speed. You can try it. We don't have a lot of spells in the build anymore to like justify the use of it, but I got this for 1 div. Alternatively, you can get a Sky Sliver with a 30% attack speed roll and 3 sockets, and that's also pretty good. It's a unique spear, but those are pretty pricey, so obviously you want to get the cheapest one possible because it's not really that important. This one also has some accuracy on it. The accuracy is going to scale into attack speed once you go over the tree. But yeah, the rings, eventually these are all 3 just going to be gold rings with double rarity and damage with resistances. We're super overcapped because we swapped these rings over from a previous character. Amulet, it is what it is. You could run an Aces if you really wanted damage and didn't care about defenses, but yeah, we're just stacking the energy shield. This is also from our other character, Ancient Aegis Anoint. Just gives you a bunch of flat energy shield. Yeah, you don't need Spirit on the helmet at all. We just happen to have a helmet with Spirit. Don't need the greatest chest ever. This is like 3 div at the time. What are we looking at here? Attack speed gloves. In a perfect world, these are Fizz, Lightning, Cold with attack speed, increased effective socketables, and then you could even get Rarity instead of crit if you really wanted to. Headhunter, not necessary. Kind of just overkill because it's a fun item, but you can swap this out for a Chevron Satchel, and it's like a great defensive layer. It lets you heal your energy shield, but you must have a flask that has the Seething tag. That gives you the prefix of instant recovery. You don't want to confuse these with the flasks that have 20% recovered instantly, I think the mod is called, because your total healing will be less. If you're going to use Chevron Satchel, by the way, you go to Act 4 here, and you make sure that you pick up increased life recovery from flasks from the Goddess of Justice. If you're not using chevrons, I should actually go here and swap this one to the mana one, but it's not really that important. I don't even have a mana flask. We never have mana issues. Your boots do not need movement speed because, again, we are not moving like this. We are moving like this with attack speed, so the movement speed tag on the boots is irrelevant. You could even get increased effective socketed items with just energy shield mods up here. Let me walk out of this twister because it's loud. What else? Yeah, charms. If you can't afford a Rite of Passage charm, you can just throw in a Fall of the Axe. You're getting Onslaught from here, so you're kind of just using the Fall of the Axe for the not getting slowed from chill, but I'm pretty sure they're nerfing that pretty soon, or the amount of them on your map, whatever. Mindful Phylacteries, if you've never heard of it, you can instead consume 20% of your max mana to trigger charms with insufficient charges. So if you run out of charm charges, like for example, my Rite of Passage charm has 0 charges right now. If I was to kill a rare, it would use 25% of my max mana, and we would still get the benefit of the charm. So this is pretty much just infinite charms glitch. The mana is not an issue whatsoever. This also gives you an additional charm slot, so when you're shopping for your belt, you do not need a belt that has 2 charm slots. If you're unfamiliar, you get a free charm slot in Act 2 from the medallions in the Valley of Titans. So usually you need 2 charm slots on your belt to get your max charm slots. On this character you do not, so you can make decisions shopping for headhunters and whatnot. Just remember that it'll affect your ability to resell the item because very few people play Ritualist. It's like less than 4% of players or something. If you're not familiar with what makes Ritualist so broken, obviously these nodes are overpowered. If you know how good charms are, you know how broken this is. Yeah, you get an extra ring. So if you're not familiar with how good rings are in the game, it pretty much goes weapons, amulet, ring in that order. Everything else is like, obviously you've got your standout items like your headhunter, which happens to be a belt. Belts in general are terrible. They like fill a slot. Rings are incredibly versatile, give you a ton of damage. Figure out your resistances. They give you rarity, which is the best stat in the game. Yeah. And then Mystic Attunement is scaling all of your rings by 25%. So 1.25x multiplier on all of your rings and your amulet, which is disgusting. If you can sanctify your amulet to +4 proj, you can actually scale it to +5 with Mystic Attunement, which is cool. Somebody mentioned that or somebody posed a question in the chat today. The math would indicate that that's possible, so I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. So if you can end up getting an amulet like this and sanctify it to +4 proj, then you can benefit from an extra skill level. Alright, we're going to go over the links before we go over the tree. Oh, also Sacred Flame, we're just taking this for the gain extra. Some people were asking if they could use Palm of the Dreamer. The build doesn't have clear issues because we're double Herald. So you can use Palm of the Dreamer, but you're over problem solving for some issue that the character doesn't have. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, Whirling Slash, we keep it at level 1. Some knockback on it because you can influence where the boss is in the arena. Like for example, you can get behind Zesht and just push him into the center of the arena. We're also going to talk about Zesht in particular later because we don't use the Rocky out of slow. We have an issue with that boss fight that we're still trying to problem solve, and that's why I've got all these support gems down here because I got to explain it, so I'm going to try to talk really fast. Rapid Attacks 3. Yeah, obviously we don't want this to deal damage, we're just moving with it, so you take the one that gives you the most attack speed. Rage 3 gives you a more multiplier. While you're not at max rage, your rage is constantly ticking down. Rigwald's Ferocity, if you look at the topmost mods, 20% more attack speed if used in weapon set 1. Obviously this is our attack speed spear, we're using this in weapon set 1, and that's going to reflect in our tree later, which we're going to go over. And you can put a final support in here like Maim or something. I'm going to explain what we were doing with these later, but Twister, pretty straightforward. Salvo, if you're not familiar, 3 stacks over here on this Twister give you additional projectiles. They're called seals. There is a unintended bug with a node called Anticipation right here, and it says skills supported by Unleash have 20% increased seal gain frequency. This also affects Salvo because they are programmed the exact same. If you're familiar with Unleash, Unleash and Salvo do the same exact thing, except Unleash is for spells and Salvo is for attacks. So you can choose to anoint this, or you can choose to get it on a Megalo. We went the Megalo route because they're not that expensive. And yeah, so the more seals you have, the more frenzy charges you have. If you saw on the map, we were shooting like, who knows, I haven't done the math, who knows how many Twisters came from this, but once you have your salvo stacks up and you press your barrage, you send out more Twisters than you normally would. Like in a vacuum, if I don't use my barrage and we just shoot them out this way, there's less than there was in that iteration, and if I do it sooner, there's even less, and if I do it sooner, there's even less. So keep in mind that is directly scaling your damage. Projectile acceleration, increases in reductions to proj speed also apply to projectile damage with supported skills. That's why we get this spear base, by the way. Supported skills have 40% more proj speed, so this is just the best single iteration of how to get proj speed. And also, this is a more multiplier, and this is an increase in reduction part. The bottommost part is multiplicative. Increase in reduction is additive through every iteration of the game, so you're not getting 40% more damage from this top line with this bottom line. If you were curious, you can unequip it and see that for yourself. That doesn't reflect in your tooltip. So, common misconception with how this works. But any other iteration of increased projectile speed with something like Kite Runner or Catapult, these would work if you really wanted to get proj speed. You can also get proj speed on Emeralds, but yeah, we'll talk about the setup over here. This is probably going to scramble somebody's brain, but we continue on. Armor Break 3. You're probably looking at this like, why do we want endurance charges if we're using frenzy charges for our barrage combo? Yes, basically what this does is you break armor equal to 20% of your fizz, and you have a 20% chance to gain an endurance charge when this skill breaks armor fully. This right here just scales your... You have a more multiplier on how much armor you're breaking. There's another support gem that reads with this exact same bottom line, but it doesn't have this top line. So yeah, this is nice. Alternative. The reason this works, by the way, is because we're using resonance. We're turning endurance charges into power charges. The old wave of combat frenzy to generate charges with Ritualist is just not good anymore. Combat frenzy is just bad. Yeah, it's just bad. Also, we used to be able to just shoot a frostbolt and get chilled ground. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to get into that in a second, but yeah, barrage, pretty straightforward. Perpetual charge, cooldown recovery 2, heightened charges, rapid casting. Is this even a spell anymore? Yeah, it is. Okay, rapid casting actually works. Alright, this is where it gets really cool. So, Frost Nexus in Herald of Thunder supported skills create chilled ground for 8 seconds when they freeze an enemy. You just have to do enough damage to make this freeze. We're doing it at level 19 with a +4 from the Flying Spear, and we only have cold on 2 of our rings. So if you get cold on all 3 of your rings like you ought to, and on your gloves, you don't have to worry about getting this online. It should be pretty straightforward. But yeah, the way we're doing that is we're putting freeze from our freeze build-up. We're putting emitter in there. It's taking the extra fire from your Sacred Flame, and it's turning it into cold for emitter. And then we're putting Elemental Armament 2 for more elemental attack damage multiplier, and Magnified Area because that creates a larger pool once everything is hit. So yeah, this is a really cool setup. Haven't seen it anywhere else yet, which is pretty sick. Herald Device, Elemental Armament 2. This one's just dealing damage, by the way. Also, you don't need Deadly Herald. You can swap this out for something else. But Elemental Armament 2, Conk Area, Long Shot, Elemental Focus, Deadly Herald. There's a way to make this perpetually chain, like old school Herald chaining using Armor Break. You can get a Wolf Charm. This is temporary, by the way. Eventually, we want to get a cat or a stag. But you get a Ool's Natoll, I think it's called. We'll check that out. I'm just gonna go over this. Leo's Board on YouTube, LEOSBOARD, has a video on how to get these to chain on their own. But you can take Ool Natoll's Embrace here, and you can scale Armor Break on your Herald Device, and you can get the Armor Break effect after the Ice Explosion to chain your other Heralds so that you can get an infinite chain going, which is pretty cool. But this build doesn't have clear issues, so it's like I would rather just take the good damage from Herald Device and just rely on the Twisters to kill everything because the Twisters are so efficient at it. But just know that Herald chaining does exist. Check out his YouTube channel, and you can figure out how to set that up. But we just have a full damage setup. You don't need Deadly Herald. I just didn't know what else to put in here. Frost Bomb, for our boss rooms, you're not going to be generating Frost Nexus chilled ground because this isn't going to proc on the boss, like specifically Zest or King of the Mist. So all we're doing is putting down a Frost Bomb, and we're picking up a Cold Infusion up here, and then we're using Ice Nova to turn this into chilled ground so we can get chilled Twisters. And then the chilled Twisters, if you're unfamiliar with how Twister works, Elemental Twisters gain 50% of damage of the corresponding type. So if you're picking up chilled ground on the floor, you are getting a chilled Twister. But yeah, obviously the Frost Bomb setup is just like, we want to make this go off as fast as possible. Let me walk out of that so you don't have to hear it. Short Fuse 2, Second Wind 3, Cooldown Recovery 2, Potent Exposure, Compressed Duration. You can have this a way lower level than I have it. It doesn't need to be level 12. That's just what I happen to have. But yeah, whenever we don't have the ability to just go pick up a Frost Nexus chilled ground stack on the ground, because this Herald of Thunder is going to go hit a monster that your Twister has ran into, right? And then you have to go over to where that monster is to pick up the chilled ground. As you're mapping, because the Twisters are faster than you, you're always running into those chilled grounds. And I'm only ever using Ice Nova like once or twice in a map. And I'll explain how we always have charges for this, even without using Frost Bomb. We were originally trying to automate Frost Bomb. That's pointless. You don't need a cast on crit setup at all. Save the spirit. But yeah, you can, worst case scenario, you can just throw one of these down instantly and put this down, and you've got your chilled Twister, Whirlwind that turns into chilled Twister ready to go. But super long-winded. This is like, don't let this turn you off from playing the build. All you have to do is copy this, and it's brain dead easy. Siphon Elements is the way that we're getting all of those cold infusions up here. Also, if you don't want to look up here while you're playing, you can look down here, and if this has a circle around it, you know that it's ready to go, and you can get chilled ground off of it. But Siphon Elements, 7% per power to spawn a cold remnant on freezing a target. So you're freezing everything, you're burning everything, and you're igniting everything. And it's just putting these remnants all over the ground. If you go back in the gameplay and look at how it was playing, yeah, it's pretty much just giving you a ton of these remnants. And these remnants allow you to create your Ice Nova Cold Ground whenever you want. So you'll get 3 stacks of these and they last for 20 seconds. And as you get another stack and another stack and another stack, it will continue to like re-up your timer. So you can just carry it forever. The boar, you actually don't need the boar either. If you really wanted to, you could drop the boar and try to fit something else in the build. You could probably put in a cast on ailment setup if you really wanted to, with like a firewall. Yeah, I don't know what else you'd put in there. Maybe, yeah, firewall would just buff your projectiles. Maybe you could throw in firewall and orb of storms and you could get an electric firewall or something cool, but the build doesn't have single target issues. It's just a little quirky. In specifically the Zesh boss room, but we'll go over it and we'll show gameplay and I'll explain what we were trying to solve with that. But yeah, this guy's just got Loyalty, Elemental Army, Last Gasp, Brutus Brain. This is a haste or a hasted boar. He's pretty slow because of you attacking 10.4 times a second. So keep in mind he's not always going to be near you to give you the haste aura. But when he is, and when you are in his vicinity, we're benefiting from Inspiring Ally, which is one of the single best sources of damage in the game. And then the Ice Nova is just Rapid Casting 2, Encroaching Ground, Magnified Area. You can also put Knockback in here, and I think I had another Strength support in here. It's really not that important. There's one that makes the... there's a Strength support that makes the ground, like the chilled ground, grow from the point that you put it. It's not important. Yeah, also this has Harmonic Remnants if I didn't cover that, but those are the skill setups. Okay. Also, Purity of Fire, if you're not aware, there's a BUG with Purity of Fire where you can just put in free support gems. Like, these don't cost us any spirit, even though they have spirit additional reservation things going on here. Don't really know what else to put in here. Ignite duration's pretty nice because we have Energy Shield, so Burning Ground's kind of annoying. But it's really not that important. You throw in Clarity and Precision because why not? Precision's actually really nice because it's you're using projectiles. But alright, let's go over the tree. Anytime you see red, you think weapon slot 1, so you think attack speed. Anytime you see red or orange, if you're colorblind, you're gonna think attack speed. You're gonna think this is my weapon that doesn't deal damage, and this is gonna be on weapon slot 1. If you're not familiar with how to use weapon slot points, up here there's like a little arrow. By the way, if this number doesn't say 24, that means that you missed out on free points in your campaign and you need to go get those. You can Google campaign rewards PoE2 and there's a website that shows you where all of them are. So every time there is red, remember that this is weapon slot 1 and that means that we are moving with this, okay? All of this is related to attack speed because that's how we are moving around. So anytime you see red, there's that. Anytime you see green, you think damage. So anytime you see green, you think damage because that is weapon slot 2, and that is where your damaging setup is with your spear and your Shrine Scepter. So we're pretty much just going over here and snagging all this for additional attack speed. The accuracy is giving you attack speed. This is damage down here. This is damage over here. This is just for pen. Honestly, these aren't really that crucial. I mean, there just isn't a better alternative. But yeah, this is all attack speed stuff. All attack speed stuff. Gives you some stats and whatnot. Alright, this setup over here, we get asked a million billion questions about this. You take a From Nothing with Walker of the Wilds. You put in either an Against the Darkness or a good enough Time Lost Emerald. Ours is kind of mid, to be honest. In a perfect world, we have one that's got like crit chance, crit bonus. If you take this exact radius, you can snag all of these nodes, including Fervor, and that's medium. And then we've got 17% increased effective notable passives in radius, which are these, right? All these big ones. If we unequip this, I'll just show you what it looks like. So these nodes regularly, this one has 15% increased crit chance and 10 int. This one's got attacks have +1 to critical hit chance. If you socket this in over here, all of these pick up 8% crit chance because it's notable passives and skills and radius also grant increased critical hit chance for attacks. And this is scaling it from a 7 to an 8, this bottommost line. So we're pretty much scaling all of these notables in here. And the reason we're taking that from nothing that works over Walker of the Wilds is this leftmost circle. It's letting us take the notables that exist within the circle, even though they're not connected to our tree, right? So dizzying hits is pretty solid. You just deal, normally it's 40%, unequip this again. Normally this is 40% increased critical hit chance against dazed enemies, and you have 10% chance of daze on hit. And then this one is also 10% chance of daze on hit, 40% increased damage against dazed enemies. And this one is gain 8% of damage as extra physical, and 15% increased effective fully broken armor. Fully broken armor just makes you hit for harder fizz. And obviously this is really nice because we're using it with our twister right here with this little combo to set up our frenzy charge generation via resonance endurance charge conversion. So that's a fucking lot of words. But yeah, these 3 nodes are just really good. And yeah, we just have a jewel slot to pick them up, so why not? Also, they're being scaled by a time lost diamond, or not a diamond, time lost emerald. So they're also just getting crit chance. So 8 crit, 8 crit, 8 crit, 8 crit, 8 crit, 8 crit, down here fervor, 8 crit. And it's all coming from 1 jewel. Pretty OP. You can get a much better one. This small passive skills and radius grant increased projectile damage. This is terrible. You can get a way better one. We have this on our weapon slot 2 for our damage setup over here. Inspiring ally because, yeah, these nodes are just insane. These are 22 damage each. 22% increased damage each. That's just like almost as good as a notable. And you just like take as many of them as you can get. But okay, Yap Session, and this is also attack speed over here, and we're coming up here and we're grabbing this attack speed as well, and right here we've got some more damage, some crit over here. Obviously we don't care about critting on our Whirling Slash first weapon setup because we're just using it to maneuver, and we're picking up some energy shield stuff, Convalescence is really nice for when your energy shield goes down. You can get your restart delay to 1.93. Alternatively, you can also take faster start of energy shield recharge as a suffix on your robe because you have 0 issues capping your resistances. If you do have issues capping your resistances, don't take reduced resistances over here. Instead, take something like reduced mana. You do not need mana on this character whatsoever. You do need a way to sustain the mana, but your total mana is kind of irrelevant. We're picking up extra cold, extra lightning, recover 2% of max mana on kill, Heart of the Well Diamond. The increased chance to inflict ailments is nice, but I was not using this and it was just fine. Obviously we're taking preservation for skill effect duration to make the twisters last for longer. They last for 4.35 seconds. Yeah, patient barrier because why wouldn't you? And the controlled metamorphosis diamond, if you're unfamiliar with this tech, it pretty much just allows you to save 7 points in your tree. We should be taking staggering palm, but we need to level up. Our character's still pretty low leveled, all things considered, but you pretty much just take deadly force, moment of truth, concussive attack, wildstorm because we have lightning in places like our rings, and you take staggering palm. If you're tired of getting hit by curses on different characters, you can use the same setup and get warding potions, but because we move so fast, we never ever get hit by curses, so we don't need that, but that pretty much lets you remove curses if you use your mana flask. So if you're tired of enfeeble or temporal chains in your map, you just take warding potions and you get rid of it. All in all, this ring saves you 7 points in tree that you can go use to just pick up a new jewel. So if you're worried about losing a jewel slot, yeah, usually from most of the important parts of the tree, you're spending 5 points to pick up a jewel. This saves you 7 points, and you snag a jewel, and yeah, it's really broken. And obviously because we're chaos inoculated, well, that's a funny term, we are immune to chaos damage and bleeding, so we don't need a bleeding charm, we don't need to do any of that. So this bottom line of reduced chaos res is irrelevant. We have -9 chaos res, but we don't care because we can't get hit by chaos damage. So all you need to worry about is massive ring on this and as close to -5 of all LE reses as you can afford. This is 3 div for a god roll for us, so keep that in mind. What else? Oh, for the armor break chain that I was explaining earlier that uses Rite of the Passage, Ools and Atoll, all of that on Herald of Ice to get the perma chain going, you would want an extra cold damage, extra chaos damage Heart of the Well Diamond instead. Again, check out Leo's video on that. I can throw it in the description. If you want to get that chain going, you want to make sure you snag one of those. Also, that's not possible if you don't take material solidification. Because you need a ton of fizz. But yeah, the other weird thing is Dance with Death. If you're not familiar, you actually can't use keystones with weapon slots. You need to use a real point to use these. So you can't just click this and only enable this for weapon slot 2. And you might say, okay, 25% more skill speed while offhand is empty, but your offhand isn't empty. When you're on your weapon swap, even though your other weapon has an offhand, your fast moving weapon slot, which is your weapon slot 1, does not. So you actually do benefit from this keystone, even though it's not specific to your, what do you call it, weapon slot. Also, I'm going to talk about snapshotting for a second. So the reason you don't put your heralds on both weapon sets and you only put it on your damaging weapon set is because if you look at my damage on this herald right now, if we could get it to proc on my movement speed spear, it would only do 3,000 damage, and this one would only deal 15k. If we weapon swap, you notice that it now 10x's in damage. They literally over 10x in damage. And basically what happens is if you have a skill that persists in the game, it is snapshotted as the weapon set that you used it on, not the weapon set that you are currently in. Your state of being is irrelevant to your weapon snapshot. So if I click a twister right now and swap weapon sets, these, if they were activated like this, would not even proc. They wouldn't even proc with this damage. They would proc with instead this damage, because the skill that it's using to proc them is a weapon slot 2 skill. It is not a weapon slot 1 skill. And a lot of people aren't familiar with that tech because they've never used a build that uses a weapon swap. So by virtue of this existing in your game state for 4.35 seconds, so long as you use these twisters, they will always exist in the game as weapon slot 2. Therefore, your heralds are only ever going to proc on weapon slot 2. So you do not need to use these heralds on weapon slot 1 as well. While we're explaining that, you basically just save a ton of spirit on your other weapon set, and honestly, there isn't really anything we can put here. If you don't want to use the boar and you'd rather use the ant for that reason, you're allowed to. But just know that you're going to have issues with the ant because of its spirit reservation. So this boar spirit reservation is 39%. With quality, you reduce that by 3.9%. You round down 3%. It's only 36% spirit reservation because it ends in a decimal. So if you wanted to use the ant, because the ant is faster, if you're not familiar with the ant beast, it moves quicker than the boar. It's got, I think it's a 47 or 48% spirit reservation. Just know you're going to have to come take these 2 nodes, and that's minus 2 points in your tree. And he does move faster, but you won't be able to afford him with the current setup without these 2 points. So keep that in mind. And you can target farm the boar just like you can target farm the ant. I'll put the companion tutorial spot where you can farm him from in the description. But if you played our previous build, you should already have a haste or a hasted boar, and that shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, that's how snapshotting works with these. Siphon elements, you don't really need this on 1, to be honest, but there's no reason not to have it. There's a world where I guess you could freeze, ignite, whatever, and generate a remnant, but yeah, you're moving around with this. What else? Yeah, we're pretty much only using the Frost Bomb in the boss arena, like I said, to pick up the Cold Infusion, to use this to get the Chilled Ground going. Yeah, okay, we're gonna explain what we were trying to do with the Zesh boss fight. So, if you know what you're doing and you know how to play the game, you go into the Zesh boss fight with the frenzy charges that you took from the breach encounter prior to him. But I know that for a lot of people, all you want to do is like loot that loot at the end of the run, and you're dragging your feet because you're probably newer at the game and you don't really know what you're looking for. So I wasn't really happy with that as a solution to
I'll fill that in as soon as I can.
to the problem. So we're just gonna run a breachstone, and I'm gonna explain it while we play it. Like the problem is that we can't generate frenzy charges inside of the boss arena because we can't like reliably break his armor with our twister to get the frenzy charges, to get the barrage to kill him, and he spawns at the back of the arena, and that's an issue. And what we tried to do is set up a spear stab that was originally, it was like we were trying to use the enduring impact, and we were just like, alright, if we just heavy stun him, we'll get 3 endurance charges, and then those 3 endurance charges with resonance will convert into frenzy charges, and if we have 3 frenzy charges, we one-shot him every time. And if we get a crit, we don't even need 3, we only need 1 frenzy charge to one-shot him. And I was like, alright, all we need to do is heavy stun him. That's super easy. We get into the boss room. It's harder than you think to heavy stun the boss with spear stab with 5 links. All of the stun related supports are just like not it. So then we were like, alright, if we can't heavy stun him, let's just blow up his armor. If we can break his armor really easily, we do a ton of damage, and we'll just gain endurance charges like that. This has a 1 in 5 to work, and you have to take off his broken armor in order to get that to work. So that means you have to use exploit weakness and whirling slash, which isn't a big deal. And we were like, okay, let's do the enduring impact and the spear stab, and we'll break his armor, and then we'll whirling slash him like we would normally do our combo, and we'll generate our charges like that. Well, the problem with that is we actually just did more damage if we just used the twister and the whirling slash. So that was a problem. And it's like, you can get that to work, but you're banking on a 1 in 5, which is shit. So then someone was like, why don't you use the monk setup with charge perfusion, a double culmination on your whirling slash and on your spear, and you can use Aelith's chimes, and you can try to figure something out like that. This is just 2 RNG. You're banking now on a 15% chance to gain an additional random charge, and this can give you power charges instead of frenzy charges. This setup is also just mid. It's not efficient enough, and we just ended up doing more damage ignoring this. So those were the things that we tried to do to generate frenzy charges in the fight. Resonance is not, you can't just take this off and use combat frenzy with Sniper's Mark to get the frenzy charges, because you don't generate nearly as many frenzy charges in the clear section of the game to just do that. So like, you don't have 5 charge uptime like permanently like we're gonna have going through this section. And yeah, so resonance is like necessary for the playability of the character. But yeah, we're just gonna go over like the issue with that. Also, I haven't tried a Rockiata slow, but I'm like almost thoroughly convinced that that item is bait at this stage of the league. But yeah, maybe that's the solution. Maybe we just invert his resistances, and I don't know. I'm a big believer of, if you have to swap out support gems, your character is just bad. Like, if you have to do gear swaps before your boss fight, your character is just bad. And I like making characters that are all around, that you never have to worry about that, because I'm a blaster and I want to just do as many iterations of my content as I can without fumbling around with my inventory like an idiot. But yeah, we're gonna break down like all you really need to do in specifically this boss encounter. You will not have any issues with any of the others except for Arbiter, because his arena is huge, like I mentioned. Is take the frenzy charges you get from this area and bring it straight into the boss fight. And you can set up your frost bomb and your Nova to get the ground chilled, and you start behind him and you push him into the center of the arena so that the geometry of the twisters is favorable, and you can get them to cross the center of the little pseudo circle that he's standing in. But I know that people want to like stand in that initial area and where all the loot drops and just spam click on all the loot, because I mean, that's why we play the game, is for the loot, right? But if you want to kill the boss at the end, save yourself the time. Like, this time around, we're not even gonna get the frenzy charges to show it, but we'll go there anyways. You're supposed to just go straight here. You put down your little frost bomb, and we're gonna Nova right before he spawns in. and that's going to make this get chilly. And then we're going to click, so he's in the center of the arena. And yeah, if you have more frenzy charges, you one-shot him here. This is a two-shot, but I could have clicked 3 times to kill him quicker. But that's all you need to do. But I know that people want to just instantly, like the second they're done with the breach section, they want to sit here and click on all this shit. If you get in that boss room with more than 1 frenzy charge, he insta-dies. Like legit instant death. But I know that people are going to be sitting here clicking through this, doing all this extra shit, and they're going to go over here to start their boss fight. They're going to go over here and start the boss fight, and they're not going to have frenzy charges, and they're going to say, what the hell, I'm not doing any damage, what the freak. And if you have worse gear than me, you're going to complain in the comment section. All you have to do, all I've been doing on stream, to be honest with you, is I'll snag all of my breach rings and all of my currency, and I'll leave the gear on the ground, and I'll instantly come over here, and we deliberately start in the back of the arena and move him forward with the knockback from the whirling slash so that he's in the center of the arena instead of against this wall. If you start in front of him, you're going to push him against the wall, and then I'll give you a quick example of just, I want you to just look at how many of the twisters will hit this throne spot where he would normally be. Like, look at how many end up going there. You can't control for this, by the way. It's completely random. So you're going to get into the boss arena, you're going to get behind him, you're going to push him to the center, because most of the twisters are going to travel through the center. That's just how the geometry works in a circular room like this. And you're going to wait to press your barrage, because you have the timer from whatever your frenzy charges is, right? Let's say it's 6. Let's say you get to this part of the fight, and he's about to be able to take damage. You do this little setup right here, you get your chilled ground. Let's say you've got 4 seconds left on this. Once you do your barrage, you've got a really long time before you have to click. The second you see his health bar, you're going to click, and that's going to give you like a good, let's just say 15-20 second window. All you have to worry about is getting this little fucker down, getting this down, and you're just standing behind him ready to go, and all you're doing is looking at your timer up here. The second this frenzy charge timer hits 1 or 2, you press barrage. The second you see his health bar, you click. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. And this is the only part of the game where you have to worry about that, but this content is popular, so I figured I'd go over that. I hope that helps you. You just have to resist the urge to like fumble around with all the cool loot you got on the ground for like 2 seconds. Just click on the breach rings, click on the currency, and just go straight to the boss arena. You can actually do it like 10 times faster than I did. You can walk through this area over the empty void and make it into his boss room, and the floor will be invisible, and you'll be able to jump the gun on him. But that was the only thing that was like actually annoying with the character that we had to cover, because obviously for me, you just watch me do it with 1 frenzy charge. If you have 5 frenzy charges, you are putting like, I don't even know how to, like, there are so many more twisters in the arena with 5 frenzy charges than with 1 frenzy charge. It's disgusting because of how barrage works. Also, if you get the proc of cooldown, heightened charges, you have a 1 in 5 of the time with all 5 of your frenzy charges, it will double the amount of frenzy charges that it's consuming, and you will have like 14 casts of a 3-stack twister that just, it's like the whole screen is just white, and his health bar like incinerates. But this is like best case scenario, or this is the best example I could have given of a worst case scenario, and he still is getting 2-shot. And I could have clicked 3 or 4 times. I deliberately didn't, just to show you that you can kill him in 2 clicks. But yeah, that's all you're doing. Getting your combo going, boom. Remember to keep exploit weakness in here. I should have had this in here the whole time. You're going to use your twister to generate the frenzy charges on their own. All of those setups I explained before, don't even bother trying. They're not good. If you can think of one outside of like these 3 of the Enduring Impact break with Spear Stab, the Armor break one with Spear Stab, and the A-List Chime setup with Whirling Slash and Spear Stab, be my guest. It'd be really helpful. Again, you don't need a Headhunter. Just throw on a Chevron Satchel and you can heal. Make sure you get this specific flask. And yeah, that's the tutorial. Obviously, we're going to update the build. This is the first guide of many. I don't want this to be the longest video of all time. 45 minutes for a build guide is pretty funny. But it's really complex, but it's also probably the most fun you'll ever have on a character. I'm just going to go out on a whim and say that. And on a limb, On a whim, on a limb? I have no idea. If you made it this far in the video, type burger in the comment section. And I'll link Leo's video in the description about the Herald chaining if you guys want to check that out. It's a pretty cool video. He's a viewer of ours. He's a real one. But yeah, have a safe day or night. You guys are amazing. Thank you for enabling me to do this. Thank you for the support in the last video. We will make an update to a new currency Bible. We'll make an update to the video once the new tower change comes out. But yeah, you guys are amazing, and I'm gonna jump on out of here. Later.